Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Every salesperson thinks they're different, yet the clients, they often don't stand out at all, leading to average sales rates of 17% globally. So what are we doing wrong? Join Scott and me as we look for answers to that question with our special guest, Dale Merrill, co-author of Strikingly Different Selling, on episode 512 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Dale Merrill. And first of all, I'd like to introduce, no book club today. So for those of you that, like to postpone the homework, next week we're going to have a book club. We'll talk about that later on. Later on in the show. So pull it out wherever it is and pick up where we left off. So before we get into the interview with Dale, I want to introduce a new sponsor, BusyWeb. I think you're going to be really impressed with their messages, what they do. They work with sales teams on developing websites that generate leads and create engagement and are relevant in today's marketplace. That's what I'm really impressed about them. So look forward to a message from BusyWeb every week. And here's the first one.
This is Dave Meyer with BusyWeb, proud supporter of the Winning at Selling podcast. Over the next few weeks, I'll be sharing revenue-driving tips I've learned running BusyWeb, a growth, marketing, and sales enablement agency in Minneapolis. I'll be talking sales enablement, CRM, automation, and how to generate buzz and business online. These buzz tips are customized for sales pros to help you land more deals with technology. You can find me at busyweb.com. That's BIZZYWEB.com. My first tip, ditch the online brochure. If your website isn't driving leads, it's probably because you're stuck in the old school online brochure mentality. Your website should be your on-demand, virtual consultative salesperson. A great site answers questions, resolves objections, and gives your prospects the information they need to decide to work with you. Go to busyweb.com, that's BIZZYWEB.com, for tools to start engaging your prospective buyers. Or give us a call at 612-4BUSY-O, that's 612-424-9990 for details.
All right. Well, Scott, I'm excited to have a new sponsor as well. And I've seen some of BusyWeb's presentations here in the Minneapolis market. So excited to have them as a sponsor. Well, we are excited also to have first-time guest. Dale Merrill is a global managing director at Franklin Covey's sales performance practice, highly sought-after thought leader, trusted advisor to sales and business leaders in many of the world's most admired companies. And for more than 30 years, Dale has led businesses and helped a wide range of clients solve challenges and win more business. That's what we want to do, win more business. So Dale, welcome to the Winning at Selling podcast.
Thank you. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. Good morning. Great to have you with us.
It is very nice to have you. It's early morning for you out there, so we appreciate you getting up.
Happy to do it.
So we're looking forward to talking about your book, Strikingly Different Selling. Before we go into that, tell us a little bit about your travels, your journey that brought you to Franklin Covey eventually and to writing this book.
Yeah, so I started my career at Arthur Andersen and in Seattle, Washington. That turned into two different units. One of them was Andersen Consulting that turned into Accenture. And I started in audit, got bored, moved into consulting, and kind of grew up through the ranks and made partner in 2000. It was a strategy technology partner. Did that in Seattle and in Northern California in the Bay Area. And then I moved into private equity and ran a couple of companies for 8 years. And what was so interesting was I was the selling lead partner in selling things at Andersen. And when I moved to the other side of the fence, so to speak, I was buying millions of dollars of services from different salespeople and consultants. And I was so surprised at how I thought many of them, if not most, just looked the same. And they all blended in. And then Covey reached out to me several years ago and invited me to come join them and be a thought leader in this practice. And I had a chance to really compare what worked and what didn't work. And it kicked off a multi-year research project that we can talk about here. So that's a little bit of my background. I live in Alpine, Utah now with my family.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for that. And so what led you to write the book then, I would assume, was this similarity you saw from salesperson to salesperson.
Yeah, it's interesting. Once I joined Covey, we work with thousands of sales leaders and sales professionals around the world. And our clients were coming to us many years ago saying, we're not getting any momentum. So we're having a hard time getting first meetings, or we're getting a first meeting, but it's not going anywhere. What can you do to help us? So we tried a number of different things, and some worked, some didn't, frankly. And then we had a unique opportunity where several global companies came to us and asked us to set up sales simulations for people from 135 countries around the world. And over a 6-year period, we had a chance to watch almost 3,000 salespeople participate in sales meetings all across the cycle. And during that process, here's what we found. We were able to interview each of the selling team and then the client people after each of these interactions. And we would go to the salespeople and we'd say, how did that meeting go from your perspective? No surprise to you guys, I'm sure. We got a thumbs up.
Great. Yeah. Fabulous.
Oh, I was terrific.
Right? Exactly. We nailed it. The Brits said, well, we were brilliant, really. And everybody else was just saying that they nailed it. And then we went to the clients. And these were C-suite people. So the CEO, CMO, CDO, CTO, all the C-suite, from finance to ops to marketing, sales, and so forth. We said, how did that meeting go from your perspective? And more than 70% of the time, they would pause and say something like this. That meeting was a waste of my time.
Wow.
Ouch. We thought, how I could see a little bit of variation, but how do you have thumbs up from one and thumbs down from the other?
Right.
And it was so surprising to us that we're slow. It took us 400 meetings, frankly. We went, hey, there's a pattern here, right? and we looked around the world. We realized this is what's happening across the world all the time. And as we looked at that, we realized that the world needs help. Salespeople have blinders and they're blind spots, and they're just not seeing reality. So that kicked off a bunch more work where we did a bunch of research that is in the book. And the long and the short of it is, it's very difficult for clients to tell the difference from one salesperson and one offering to another. In fact, we partnered with a firm named Primary Intelligence, and we looked at more than 19,000 B2B buyer and seller interactions. And 42% of the time, the sellers could not tell the difference between buyers. And there's reasons for that.
So no memorability at all.
Yeah, they just looked the same. And so that led to these global win rates of 17, 18% globally, from $100,000 deals all the way up to $1 billion deals.
Okay. Great. Well, the subtitle of the book is 6 Vital Skills to Stand Out and Sell More. So that's what you're talking about. How do I stand out? And in our time together, we probably don't have time to talk about all 6, but let's focus on 1 or 2 of these skills that you bring up in the book, and what can make the biggest difference for most salespeople.
Sure. Let me give you just an idea of the mindset that is important here. This is the first book that at least my co-authors and I are aware of, where we really did our very best to write this through the eyes of the buyer, not the seller. And we worked with these executive people, these clients around the world for years, and we asked them what works and what doesn't work. And after hundreds of hours of pushing and testing and trying and failing, we came up with a mindset that we found works almost every time. You have to do it your style, your way, of course. It's called relevant, distinct, and memorable. So let me just briefly tell you that, and then we'll jump into a couple of the skills that bring it to life.
Excellent.
So the concept is this. You want to be relevant, meaning focus on what matters most to the client, not to you, not to the salesperson. And distinct means show the client something different and better from their perspective. I mean, I could put on a bright on a circles and light my remaining hair on fire, and that would certainly be different, but not necessarily better. So you have to focus on what matters most to the client, bring them something different and better. And then the last one, memorable, is whatever you share, make it easy for them to share and hard to forget. So this formula of relevant, distinct, and memorable has just lit up thousands of our clients and professionals around the world. And clients tell us that when you approach them this way with a really sincere, authentic approach, it makes a difference. Well, we had to get practical. So as we worked through the years with these executives, we came up with these 6 vital skills. And so these are the ones that bring it to life. The first one is you have to capture people's attention.
Right.
So we went to the advertising industry, and it actually came up this way. It's capture attention with verbal billboards. We were working with a client who was talking to some salespeople. And the client got so frustrated because the salesperson wasn't getting to the point. And he said, hey, get to the point. Sum it up for me in a billboard. That's interesting.
Right.
So we ran with it. So that's when we really looked, how can we create a sales billboard that actually would help people stand out in a client-centric way?
Yeah.
So the principle is to think and speak in headlines, to link to the client's goals and issues, not what you're trying to do as a salesperson, but the client's, and then use, and this is a secret nugget, big nugget, is use from to comparisons, from to outcomes. The client can go from this, the current state, to this, the future state. So the formula that I would hope your listeners think about is how to go from X, current state, to Y by when.
Mm-hmm.
Starting line, finish line, and a deadline.
So kind of giving them that future state, that goal that we can move you toward.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What's interesting is if you look at most marketing and most sales messages, including proposals and other things that salespeople give to clients, it's almost always the future promised destination. It's the to. Rarely is there a juxtaposition of the from and the to.
Mm-hmm.
And the human mind, we've done a lot of study on this, even with neuroscience and how this works. The human mind paints vivid, powerful images in their mind when they juxtapose something that has an emotional piece and a meaningful piece to them from and to. It's more powerful than any cinematography, any musical score, anything else you can imagine. So if you do it right, and we have a lot of examples in the book, you have a chance to get through that filter that's in our client's brain and be relevant to them.
So Dale, it seemed to me that this was something that you do before that first appointment, that you have to kind of assume what you think you can do for them. Is that true? Or do you create this billboard based on your interviews with the client?
It's both, actually. To earn the right to get in and talk to them initially, obviously you have to have a hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do enough research on their website and any public filings if they're a publicly traded company, press releases, earning things, LinkedIn, coming up with what would be of value to them based on our industry experience, other client experience, etc.
Right.
And you come up with a hypothesis. And the billboard is really your core message for the client. But to be clear, every one of our story forms in the book is 90 seconds or less. It can be done in written form or it can be done in verbal form. So it could be an email, it could be a LinkedIn message, or it could be a phone call or a Zoom chat or whatever. But you have to earn the right to get to the table.
Yeah.
Then if you look at skills 5 and 6, once you're there, you actually have to engage and move away from whatever you brought up to find out what problems the client's trying to solve, what results they're trying to achieve. Then, Bill, you would fine-tune and adjust your core message based on what's most important to the client. So earn the right first, then get into the human dialogue.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Dale, you talked about the to and from and the current state to the future state. And I just want to try to help our listeners kind of take on some of their other sales training and experience and what they've learned about selling is we usually talk about problems and impact of problems. Then we talk about solutions. Can you kind of incorporate the to and from when a salesperson is thinking, I was always told to uncover problems and peel back the pain and then offer a solution and then talk about the impact of the solution sticking to a problem? Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that context?
All of that is alive and well. And it's very much pervasive throughout the book because you have to do that. What we found is that people, oftentimes salespeople, will go in and do a fishing expedition. And they're trying to find out what are all the pain points, what keeps you up at night.
Right,
and it doesn't resonate. We ask these clients, how long do you want us as a salespeople to talk before they engage you? Guess what they said? How many minutes do you think in a 60-minute meeting?
I don't know.
Not very many.
Yeah. One or two, right?
Yeah.
2. It was like 2 minutes. And so what we're saying is put something provocative and insightful before the client, not over the top. Not unique, but just right about where you can get in there. And then it's about connecting and engaging and doing all the things you mentioned, Scott, of course. Yeah. What are the problems you're trying to solve as it relates to this topic, XYZ topic? And what are some of the key results you're looking to get? And you uncover that through discovery, through asking the right questions, which we get into in skill 5 and skill 6. And then there's an opportunity in almost every interaction There's about 5 key inflection points in every interaction. Starting of the meeting and the ending of the meeting are the 2 big ones, the bookends.
Right.
And you have 2 or 3 other opportunities. We're preparing people for when it's your time to talk, what will you say? So when you talk, make it rock.
Right.
Then you have a little nugget, and it's not about you. It's about the client and how they can achieve something different and better. And so this just is the fabric of a great winning conversation. That's kind of what we've worked to put together, and it really works well. So that's, you weave this in, you tell a little story, you do the discovery, and then the client will ask a question. It'll tee up another opportunity to share another nugget.
Now, the next part to this is the movie trailer, which I think can be a great opening to a meeting. It's a proof statement, and it's a great conversation starter. I think it takes the place. We were taught to do the company pitch, right, which is pretty ineffective, all the chest beating that goes on there. But you talk about this movie trailer, and I love that concept. You want to go into that a little bit?
I would say the movie trailer is the poster child, if you will, for the book, Strikingly Different Selling. It's the second skill, and it's about once you've captured the client's attention, and it's almost like, think of a little child who grabs their parent, with their hands on their cheeks, says, "Hey, Dad or Mom, listen to me."
Yeah.
Once you've done that with the billboard, you've captured attention, it's time to create some excitement for the client on what they can do and achieve that's different and better than what they're doing and achieving today. So it's about creating excitement. You start with capture attention, and then you have to go one notch deeper to create enough interest to actually then invite them to take action. So it's capture attention, create interest, and call to action. And this is really an interesting thing. If you think about how do we actually progress a conversation, how do you do that? You do that by being thoughtful and mindful about how can I interact with this person in a very client-focused way so that they want to listen further. That's what movie trailer is all about.
Okay.
Do you think that prospects and clients really know what they want? When you talk about an outcome, I've learned that some clients and prospects don't know what they want, and they kind of turn to a salesperson to talk about different options, and then the salesperson gives them all of these suggestions and solutions, and some of them are relevant and some of them are not. But I find that sometimes prospects don't know what they want.
You're exactly right. That's why it's incumbent on the salesperson to do enough research and planning to come up with something that's provocative and insightful. And so, yes, you can't just go in and say, "What do you want?" and we'll give it to you.
Right.
It's much more than that. Based on your other client experience, innovative things you're doing in the industry segment, that's where you put together the provocative, insightful movie trailer, Bill, to get a meeting or to start the meeting. And it's very much like when we go to read a news article every day. You guys read something on your phone?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How do you decide what to pick?
Headline.
Yeah, if you're like most of us, we scroll through our device, we find a headline that we like, we go click, and we click. Once we get into the article, they have about 5 seconds to actually create enough interest to have us go through the whole article. Same principle in working with humans. We live in a soundbite 24/7 news cycle society. And so when we're interacting, using the inductive method, so we'll give them the outcome, the headline first, and up to 3 from 2 sub-headlines, it gives you enough oomph to get into a great conversation. And then, again, it's not about jumping on the table and pounding our chest and saying how amazing we are. It's about really leaning in. How can the client see the world differently and do different things to actually get different and better outcomes?
So, Dale, our listeners went through the book club, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And there's the same author. Randy did that one, and Randy was also involved in this one. What did Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play leave out? Or how has the market changed? Or how does your book kind of address the changes in the marketplace that Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play didn't cover?
Yeah, great question, Scott. I love Let's Get Real. Randy does too, as you might expect. Here's the best way to describe it. There's one coin with 2 different sides. One side of the coin is what we call world-class inquiry, asking great questions, having great discovery, really understanding what's most important to the client. On the other side of the coin is world-class advocacy, advocating on behalf of the client, actually having provocative insights shared. Let's Get Real focuses primarily on world-class inquiry. Strikingly Different Selling focuses primarily on world-class advocacy. We felt that both pieces we know that both pieces are absolutely necessary. And so we wrote the book Strikingly Different Selling to bring in the very moment now, especially as we pass through the pandemic and we get to today, what people need is clients are not very patient. Everybody looks and sounds the same.
Yep.
How do you capture their attention, create excitement, build confidence, and become essential in a different way, a client-centric way? That's what Strikingly Different Selling is all about.
Yeah.
I love their companion volumes that are really, really powerful for people to go through.
Well, that's what we're hearing from not only from authors, but from our clients as well, is that we need to bring some value into that first appointment. We can't just come in and say, hey, it's really nice to meet you. Let me ask you some questions. And then we build our value based on their answers. We've got to bring that expertise in there. I think your movie trailer does that very well. But whatever we do, bring that value in that says we have expertise. We're bringing you something here, not just the ability to sell or buy a product.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when people do, this is no surprise by the way, to any salesperson on the planet that they have to bring contrast. No surprise at all.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a really important point. Almost every salesperson we've looked at, not all, because a few are what we call strikingly different, but most salespeople don't define contrast in a way that invites the client to act. And when you define contrast differently, as we do in the book, it makes a difference. And we define contrast through this lens of relevant, distinct, and memorable. Focus on what matters most to the client, show them something different and better to them, and then make it memorable, easy to share and hard to forget. These words are so easy to say, and after watching literally thousands of salespeople, arguably some of the best in the world, around the world, we watched almost 3,000 of them, and then we've watched almost 10,000 additional over the past years. It's rare. And it's one of those things, there's a knowing, doing gap.
Yeah.
And we do our very best in the book to close that gap and help people have actionable things to define contrast in a way that helps them stand out to the clients.
I thought one of the things you did very well in the book was giving a lot of examples so people could make this billboard and this movie trailer for themselves. And unfortunately, an online conversation can't do that. A podcast can't do that. And I would recommend people go out and pick up the book because it really does have some great detail in that, in how to do that.
I appreciate that, Bill. What I think is helpful for people, we use the FOIL method. This is a bad example. This is a good example. Mm-hmm. We did it a ton. We polled, the original volume was more than 400 pages, and we realized most salespeople are busy. They're not going to read it. So we had to push hard to cut things out to get to a very practical, hands-on book that people can apply. So there's a lot that's not in the book as far as all this backstory, but wow, some really good, bad, and good examples. And that would be helpful for people.
I thought it was when I read it.
I have two questions, Dale. Moving back to the contrast, is it a safe statement to say that the greater the contrast, the greater the value, the more a prospect is willing to pay?
Yes.
So we understand the importance of contrast. And I think you hit a point that I think is really overlooked with salespeople is to developing the contrast. And I think the contrast in your context is to and from. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and there's many different ways in the English language or any language to contrast that.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to juxtapose two things together so that the clients can see the contrast.
Yeah.
Nobody does that, especially when they're sharing their differentiator. They just declare it. Here's a declarative statement. Boom.
Right.
And they pop it out.
Yeah.
The client goes, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I that's so important, contrast and the value, and the more contrast, the more value, the greater the prospect's willing to pay. My last question is, I'm always curious every time we have a guest on, an author on, what books have you read that have had the biggest impact on your life?
Oh, I'm an avid reader, so that's a tough one.
Yeah.
If I think back to seminal works that have shaped my career,
the
first one was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Of course. We did that book too.
Covey.
Yeah.
Literally, my wife actually was in marketing for Covey back when he had 20 employees before he was a global, awesome company. And I was in grad school, and we met Stephen. We had a chance to be beta participants in 7 Habits. It changed both of us dramatically. Another one that I love, Jim Collins.
Yeah.
I read all his works. Good, I had just made partner when his first Good to Great book came out, and we flew him out to Chicago. And when he talked about the flywheel and some of those concepts and principles, I just went, wow. And another book that he wrote that many people haven't read, but many have, is called Great by Choice, 10 years later. Yeah. And he sifted through all of the 2,500 different companies, and he said, why do a handful, perform at 10x the results of these others? And he said, through all the research, if you boil it down, there's a quote that I'll never forget. I'll just share here. Mm-hmm. He said, the difference between all those also-rans and the very vital few, he said this: the signature of mediocrity is not an unwillingness to change. The signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency.
Wow.
So as we looked at, and I've had that in my mind as we went through and looked at all this research and all this work with salespeople and clients, I realized the real challenge in selling is chronic inconsistency. Mm-hmm. And if we can be practical and helpful, which is what we tried to do in Striking the Difference Selling, to help people put a bit of a system in place to connect and engage with clients, what we're really achieving is going from digital to human. This is all about human interaction. So those are some seminal works. I've read a bunch more. I could rattle off a bunch of others, but those are some seminal ones for me.
Yeah. I'm always curious. So
it's interesting because what you're talking about is not practicing on your clients, and we talk about that a lot. Too many salespeople run their practice session on a live client, and not enough sales groups and organizations do weekly sales training to really get this type of material down. Whatever process you select, just practice it with each other instead of practicing on clients.
Yeah. Can I just throw one more book in?
Yeah.
Along those lines, it really had an impact. It's Anders Ericsson wrote a book called Peak: The Science of High Performance. Malcolm Gladwell quotes him when he says you have to have 10,000 hours to be an expert.
Yep.
Gladwell actually misquoted a bit on what Anders was suggesting. Anders didn't say you have to have 10,000 hours. He said you have to have a standard that you're going for, and then a coach to help you see the gaps between what you're doing and what the standard is. Mm-hmm. It could take 10,000 hours. He gave that example, but it could take 6 or some other 1,000 of hours. Right. That's another great book that gets into this helpful thing of just saying the words and practicing. Just try it.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent.
Super. Great advice.
All right. Well, we're running out of time. Any last thoughts that you want to bring up, Dale, and also any kind of resources that you want to offer to our listeners that we can link to our page?
Sure. Well, I would invite people to get the book just because it's helpful, Striking the Difference Selling, and that you can ping me if they had more questions or would like to talk with me and my colleagues at Franklin Covey. You can shoot me a note or connect with me on LinkedIn. You could Google Striking the Difference Selling and Dale Merrill. You'd find me. My email is Dale, DALE.Merrill, MERRILL, @franklincovey.com. And there's lots of resources. We work with lots of different people. Really, the final thought would be, I would invite everybody who's listening to this to do their very best to be relevant, distinct, and memorable. Before every interaction, blaze that into your brain. Evaluate whatever you're going to say and do through that lens, and it will really help you be focused on what that other human needs, that buyer, that client, and it'll make a difference for you.
All right.
Yeah. Great advice.
Thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Scott. Great.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
So as we close up, Scott, we've got your golden nugget.
Yes. This may be recognizable for some of you. No one ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and they're not the same person. By Harry Clytus.
Harriet?
Harry
Clytus. Harry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was a medieval, Greek, philosopher back in the time. These early words. I'm a salesperson. I can't pronounce big words.
One thing I thought interesting when I read that is so many people who read a book they like, and Dale was talking about some of his favorites, but you go back and you reread a book that you thought was really good and you find new stuff in it.
Right.
And it's because your situation has changed,
Exactly.
the river has changed, and you have changed, and you need new things. So just because you read that good book once doesn't mean you shouldn't read it again. I read How to Win Friends and Influence People every year. That's my favorite book. And so great quote, Scott.
Yeah. Thank you. Great response, Bill.
Yeah. And Harry did a good job. That's
yeah, he did.
All right, Phil, for all this information, we'll put Dale's email in that, but go to winningatselling.com for all those links.
Next week, we're going to be covering the success principles, part 3, principles 39 through 43. And our topic will be advice not given.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.